So lovely. Hopefully everybody's well and you've had a good week. I've had lots of questions, so that's good. So if it is your first time, welcome. If you, let me just write in this chat box. Just checking that, just to check the sound on the chat box, because hopefully it looks like most people can hear me as we are going through. So obviously, again, this is our second week, so welcome back to those of you that have joined us last week. If you are new, welcome. It's lovely to see you, and hopefully you've received all of the information you need to. So at the end of this session, this is all being recorded. You will receive an email that will have a link to the recording. You will also receive on that email a link to the Dropbox. It's got all the files that we use. I'm saving absolutely everything in that Dropbox so that you can access it. And I'll also make sure I email it out to you. So don't worry about constantly emailing me. I will send it out a couple of times over the week. So if anybody is worrying they're not receiving anything, you absolutely will. If you are new, and you're seeing this on YouTube tomorrow, welcome. And if you want to register for the session, if you go onto the First Intuition website, you'll be able to find a link to be able to actually contact. So hopefully everyone's happy. Has anyone got any questions before we get started? Sorry if it's background noise, it may be because my window is open and there was just a van that drove past. Hopefully that sounds a little bit better for you now. Good, okay, right, let's get started then. So we're going to start off again like we did last week with a Menti quiz. So if you want to grab your phone or another device, so an iPad, but one that you're not looking on the screen, what we're going to do is we're just going to log into a website called www. This is because I closed down my browser. Bear with me 1 second. Yes, so that's a really good question there, Fran. So I'm not sure if you just joined a few minutes ago late into the session, but for some unknown reason, Zoom is actually logging absolutely all of you in as Rebecca Empson. So if you do notice that you are logged in as Rebecca Empson, if you can try and change your name by hovering over and just go into more, you can change it to rename. However, a lot of people haven't been able to do that, so we've just gone ahead with it. Fran, you are shown as Fran, which is great, but it is strange because lots of messages, for some unknown reason, about 30 people have been logged in as my name for some reason, so I do apologise for that. It seems to be a bit of a glitch with Zoom. So if you go onto www.menti.com and use the code that's just pasted at the top there, so 89 52 36, lots of people are joining in. And hopefully in a moment, we're going to be able to have a go at our quiz. So what this is just a couple of questions from the ethics section of the chapters. So just a little bit of recap before we go on to our spreadsheet that I sent out to you. So there's just 5 questions. If you haven't got a device where you can log in and play through, you can follow on the screen. You just won't obviously be able to answer. So you can still play at home. And the quicker you answer the question, the more points you get. So the idea is get the question right first and foremost, but the quicker you answer, the more points you are going to get. Good. Well done, Sarah, for changing your name. Everybody else is going to have to say as Rebecca. If you do notice you are as Rebecca, if you just pop your name into the chat box before asking a question, it just means that I can direct any questions back to you. Good, right, okay, so there's 86 people online and 65 that have joined. Good, the web address for the quiz is just at the top of the page there, www.menti.com. And if you just use the code 89 52 36, all popped in there for you. Good, let's get started because obviously we've only got an hour, so I don't want to make sure that we make the most of this hour together. So there's 5 questions. If you're not logged into Menti, you can still play along, and obviously you can just keep a little track of how you get on yourself. So quicker you answer, the more points you're going to get. So which of the following are responsible for reviewing financial statements prepared under accounting standards to ensure they are correct? You've got 38 seconds, so carefully read through these. You've got the Financial Reporting Council, the Executive Committee, the Codes and Standards Committee, and the Financial Reporting Review Panel and the Monitoring Committee. Which one of those do you think would be responsible for reviewing financial statements? You've got 15 seconds. If you're not sure, give it a guess, because in the exam I'd like to think that you would give this a guess if you were unsure. So pop one in. We've still got a few people that are obviously looking to answer. Most of you are almost there. 3, 2, 1. Time's up. Let's see how we got on. Okay, right. Now, the key word in this question was reviewing. So I knew it was a bit of a nasty question when I popped it in, which is also why I gave you a little bit longer to look at this question. Now, I knew everyone was going to go for the Financial Reporting Council because they're the big dogs that sit at the top. Everybody else sits underneath. Now, the reason I wanted to pop this question in there is because there was a key word in the question that's very similar to what AAT will do. The word reviewing was popped into that question, which, and you can see there, the review panel. So it is a really hard question, and the reason I did it was because it's a typical thing that AAT will try and trick you with. Absolutely, Sarah, you've said there that I thought that at first and I changed my mind. Go with your gut. That is the best bit of exam technique advice that I could give you. Absolutely, if that's your first instinct, it generally is quite on the right lines. So absolutely well done to those 17 people. But if you did get it wrong, it was a tough question and it's the hardest one of the 5. I started with the nasty one and I just wanted to do it to give you some hints and tips as to how to approach these questions in the exam. Good. Let's see who got it right then, and let's see who was the fastest and who's at the top of our leaderboard. Just a little bit of fun. So, at least there's not 30 Rebecca's in here. Elle was the fastest with a little strawberry there. So she also got it right. I'm assuming it's a girl, actually, to be fair, I shouldn't assume. Also got it right, so they're going to sit at the leaderboard. Let's see if anyone can catch them up with this second question. Good, let's have a look then. So you've only got 30 seconds for this one. So the quicker you answer, the more you'll get right. If management know they are selling a product which would fail safety tests but don't recall it or stop selling, they are facing which type of risk? So there could be some overlap here, but there's only one here that it should relate to. So you've got reputation, event, seasonal risk, competitive risk, or operational risk. Which one do you think they would be facing? Make a guess if you're not sure. You've got 4 seconds. Great, so most people getting it right. They do get a bit easier. The ones last week were all on ethics, so they were all obviously on the same sort of line. I'm trying to now mix it up and go from different sections of the syllabus. But reputational risk, you're absolutely right. Operational risk is more around if something happened within your business and you couldn't then make your product. So for example, your machines all broke down. So that's what I'm saying now. So absolutely, it could be legal risk, but legal risk isn't on there. So you're absolutely right. If the product was going to fail, you're absolutely right. People could come along and sue you, and therefore it would be a legal risk. There's always going to be some sort of overlap. But if you think about the fact that if a product, if you just finish the rest of the ethics book, Fran, that might be a good idea. Good idea for these questions. Perfect. Remember, this is revision. It's obviously trying to get us ready to sit on the exam. So if you think about what's happening here, if you are a business that obviously is going to sell your product and you know that product is going to break and you carry on selling it and everyone finds out about it, well, they're going to tell all of their friends. They're going to write reviews on Facebook. And there's a chance there that's going to affect your reputation, and therefore you won't obviously be able to sell your product anymore. An event risk is where an event could happen. So for example, maybe you would end up doing something and it might end up with a fire that may happen in your business, and that would be one big event that obviously gave you an issue within your business. The most common ones we have is reputational risk, operational and legal as well. So hopefully in the exam they won't make it complicated for you. So have a review of your questions in your lecture examples, in your books, in your notes, wherever you've got those from. and just have a little bit of a practice. There is generally some overlap here when they do look at these risks, especially with things like reputational and legal. You're absolutely right. If someone got harmed by your product, you're likely to end up in court and have to pay out some money. But I purposely didn't put legal risk in there because I realised that there would be some overlap. So brush up on these, have a practice. You can look on the AAT website if you need some additional questions. And let's have a look at how this affects our next question. The thing is, Joe, you're saying 5 questions, 2 wrong. The good thing is what you can now do is you can pop that on your revision list. If you got all of these questions right, when you got through to the exam, if the question asked you in the exam something that you didn't know, you'd then get it wrong. So the thing that you need to think about here is this is 2 things that you didn't know, that hopefully if it came up in the exam, you would now know. So that's the most important thing with these revision sessions, that at the end, you've learned something new. So that's what you've got to take away from that. And the best way to remember it is actually to get something wrong. Perfect. Write down the questions, write down the answers, and actually you now know that there's 2 bits there that you need to practice in your notes. And that's the most important thing that should come out of these revision sessions. So great stuff. Right, let's have a look at what happened to the leaderboard then. It's just a bit of fun, this leaderboard. The most important thing is that you guys pass your exam. That's all we're really aiming to focus on. When you sit your exams, you're going to pass them. So well done, Gareth, for being the fastest. Well done, Elle, for staying at the top of the leaderboard. Let's see what the 3rd question brings. I do think they were the hardest 2 questions, so hopefully the next couple will be a little bit easier for you. Okay, placement, layering, and what are the 3 steps involved in money laundering? So retention, integration, laundering, acquisition, and internalize. Which one is the 3rd step? You've got 15 seconds. If you're not sure, have a guess. It's only easy if you know it. I don't know who said that because it says that I said it and I didn't write that. Good, 28 people, perfect. Integration. So there are 3 steps of money laundering. Well, Emily, these questions wouldn't appear in your ethics book because I've made the questions up. I've gone through the ethics note and I have made these questions up. So they are not ones that were in the syllabus. So you should have in your books though, you should have money laundering and you should have in there the 3 steps of money laundering. So the 3 steps of money laundering are placement, layering and integration. So fabulous stuff for everyone who got that right, 28 people, well done. But remember, if you didn't, pop these down on your revision list, take a note of them, and that's another one that you need to add on. If anyone wants to watch a really interesting video on that, if you Google Breaking Bad money laundering, there's a really nice video, just 2 minutes, but it explains the 3 steps. So that could be something that you might want to have a little watch if you've got 2 minutes free and you want to have a look at how each of these do work. But well done, those 28 people. Let's have a look at what happened to our leaderboard. Let's have a look. Gareth the fastest again, well done. But it looks like Elle is staying at the top. Let's see if they can make it all the way through to the end. So question 4, let's see. Caroline, I'll answer in a minute. The maximum bribery for penalty, the maximum penalty for bribery is an unlimited fine and what length of prison time? 14, 5, 7, 10 years or life? Let's have a look how you get on. So it's 17 seconds. Caroline, if you just YouTube it, YouTube Breaking Bad money laundering, you'll find it. It's about a 2-minute video and it's quite a nice explanation that just explains those 3 steps. Just a little bit of off the notes explanation. It's quite a good one. See how we got on. A nice mixed bag again. 10 years is your answer. 14 years and 5 years are for money laundering. So they are for, if you commit money laundering, it's 14 years. If you are found guilty of tipping off, that's 5 years. So just brush up on these. These could be multiple choice questions in your exam. They are harder, absolutely. But for bribery, the maximum prison time would be 10 years and an unlimited fine. Good. Well done to those 16 people. Let's have a look how that affects our leaderboard then. Could have a change around here. Seb being the fastest, perfect. And Joel, I think that might be an acronym, has got to the top of our leaderboard. Well done. And that is with one question to go. Let's see how we get on. Sarah, 5 years was for tipping off for money laundering. So if you really look at your money laundering topics. Last one. Accountants in the UK are required to keep their knowledge up to date and do CPD. What fundamental principle does this protect? We were good with our fundamental principles last week, just testing a slightly different way here. But is it objectivity, integrity, professional competence and due care, professional behaviour or confidentiality? Let's have a look how we got on. Great stuff. 67 people there. You're really, really good with your fundamental principles. You've just got to make sure that you do obviously revise the whole of ethics before we get to the exam, which is why we were obviously looking at extending that. Yes, Nadia, it was for money laundering. So if you commit money laundering yourself, then the maximum prison sentence would be 14 years. Good. Looks like everyone's really good with the fundamental principles and your ethical principles. Just make sure that's not where your ethics stop. Good. Becca, you're absolutely right. There is reference material for the first section of the exam. Absolutely. So you can actually get hold of that on the AAT website, or if you are a first intuition student, we have that on our MyFI login page. So you can go in and get that up, and you'll be able to log in and you'll be able to refer to that. Yeah, absolutely, you are right. But because the exam is reasonably time pressured, you're not going to have time to look up all of this. But it is something that is really good as part of your revision. So that's absolutely brilliant. Okay, that was our last technical question. Let's see what happened to our leaderboard right at the end. Oh, picked at the post, Delvin, well done. And Gareth was fastest again for the third one. Absolutely fantastic, fabulous. Just a question now, I don't know who wrote it because it says that I did, but can we get future questions on ethical safeguards in future weeks? There is actually, someone requested last week a written question on ethics. Ethical safeguards are in there. So you will be looking at that next week, yeah, absolutely. And that does bring me very nicely onto our last topic. Now, I know a lot of you have been mentioning that there are things that you'd like to cover in these revision sessions. What I'd like you to do now is just write onto your phone and pop into this slide what you'd like to cover. Can you be a little bit more specific than just ethics? Ethics is quite a large topic. So I'm just going to let a couple come in. Please, absolutely nothing inappropriate, because remember this is being recorded and it's going to be sent out to everybody, students, and it's going to go on YouTube. So nothing inappropriate, please. That would be great. Joanna's just asked, those who know, we get access to materials. If you were here at the beginning, I did say that everything will be sent out. All of the recordings from the last sessions will be sent out. All of the information for the pre-work and the answers is all going to be sent out. So I'll do that at the end of every session. So don't worry about carrying on messaging me, etc., etc. That will all come through. So I'm just going to have a little look at some of these. Goal 6 covered tonight, which is great. Costing is our example for tonight and next week. Having a problem with ethics, Patricia, I need you to be a bit more specific. I can't teach the whole thing. We've only got an hour and we need to cover spreadsheets as well. So anything that's written onto this slide, what I'm going to do is I'm going to export it at the end, and I'm going to try and get as many of these as possible in our last 3 sessions. So if you carry on popping them in, I'm going to try doing it. The person that's written all just started the unit. I'm sorry, this is not actually a tuition, it is a revision session. So obviously, please carry on going through that and maybe actually look at these when you are ready, for example. A couple of you have written questions. There is a written question next week, so that will be covered. So a lot of these things we have started covering. So I'll just give you another 30 seconds just to write anything extra on. The extended trial balance, we did that last week. So if you look back at last week's task, we won't go through it again. Absolute cell referencing, we'll look at that every single week as we go through. And What if scenarios, we're doing that tonight with our goal seek. Good. So I think a lot of them we have covered. I just wanted to have a little sheet for me where, as I'm prepping for the next couple of weeks, I do pop these all in. A lot of these I have covered tonight and next week. Good. Perfect. So I'm going to keep that up on the screen so I can export it next week. Print area, we haven't actually done tonight, but I promise I will do it again before we go for it, before we get to the end of the course. So I'm going to try and cover as many of these as we do go through. But what we're going to do now is we're going to move on to our spreadsheet, just because I want to make sure that we have enough time to go through it. So anyone that did register after lunchtime today wouldn't have received the pre-work, so I'm just going to send it in the chat box. So hopefully you can download it from there if you didn't receive it, if you did register after, I think it was about 1:30 today. I didn't send it again because I didn't think you'd have time to be able to do it for tonight. You can follow through if you want, or you can just watch the recording for tonight. And then you can have a go at home, and obviously you can watch this recording back when the recording gets sent out to you if you want to have a go on your own. How did we find this one, guys? How did we find this one this week? Harder than last week? Okay, goal seek was hard, good. Ranking tricky. Don't understand limiting factor, obviously have a look at your costing. Brilliant, well done, Damien. Good, goal seek was awful. Well, goal seek's always awful. So that's okay, Sarah, if you didn't have the time, that's absolutely fine. So you can just watch through this next 40 minutes and then you can have a go at home. So let's see how we get on. Sarah, it's good to see that you like goal seek. We did do it a couple of times in our classes though, so that might be why you guys aren't finding it too bad. So goal seek didn't understand what it was asking. That generally is the hardest thing with goal seek. So we'll go through bit by bit tonight and hopefully we can kind of decipher how we obviously factor into this. So we've got a very similar scenario here where you're a part qualified accountant, you've got all of your information, and what we've got here is we've got a series of tasks that we need to go through. I'm going to follow the same way as we did this last week, in the fact that I'm going to highlight anything yellow when I've finished it. I've had a couple of questions of people asking, do you need to take the yellow off? You can if you want, but you won't be marked down in the exam. If you've got loads of time, you can take it off, that's absolutely fine. But if you leave it on, you won't be marked down. So I wouldn't worry about that too much. So what I said last week was for each of these sections, I would read the whole requirement and then go back and start, because sometimes when you read the third or fourth thing, it might mean that actually you've missed out something that you need to do and you don't want to leave that behind. So let's read through part one. On the limiting factor analysis tab, complete the boxes shaded in grey using formulas where possible. You should use a formula to calculate all sums per unit. A rank formula should be used to rank all contracts, and cell referencing should be used where possible. Now, a couple of you emailed me about the ranking, and what I told you to do is if you didn't know how to do it manually, because in the exam, you're not going to be able to email your tutor and you need to be able to move past. So I'm going to show you how to do it, but I just want to really highlight to everybody, if there's something you're not sure how to do in a formula, but you know how to do it manually, you need to move past it. You need to do that part of the task and then move past, so that you can still get the marks after that, which is why I was a bit mean and didn't help anyone that emailed me, because I wanted you to see how you got on without that help, because obviously these are our revision stages now. So let's have a look at what we're doing here. So on the limited analysis factor, Sarah's asked, sometimes I wasn't sure if the row required a manual answer or a formula. If you can do an answer, you should use a formula. If you can't do a formula, then you should type it in. And that's kind of the way that you'd do it in the real world, wouldn't you? If you was at work and someone asked you to do a spreadsheet, you wouldn't say to your manager, does this need a formula? Does this need a formula? The whole part of this exam is it's trying to be real world. So if you can use a formula, use one. If there's nothing to do a formula for, then you can't. So then you wouldn't be able to do it. So that's how I would approach that part. So let's start having a look through these. So we need to fill in the grey boxes, and we need to use a formula where possible. So for my contribution per unit, I've got contribution on my top line, and I've got the number of units that's involved in the contract. So I can use a formula to take my contribution and divide it by my number of units. And that should tell me that that contract is making £2 per unit. I can drag these across. I don't have to do them for each one. I can drag it across, or I can copy and paste, and that's now popped that formula into each of those other cells. I'm going to keep going. Just pop in the chat box if there are any questions on what I'm doing, and then I'll be able to go back. So I think our ranking is the bit where we're going to obviously make sure that we practice together. For our contribution per hour of labour, again, I need to calculate my contribution, but now instead of the number of units, I need to divide it by the number of labour hours. So equals my contribution divided by my number of labour hours. That gives me 12, and if I drag that along, it then gives me 9 and it gives me 8. Now, at this point, this is the point where you need to say to yourself, how good is my costing knowledge? I cannot teach you the whole of costing in 1 hour over 5 evenings. That's something you're going to have to revise yourself. We don't even go through all of the content in costing when we reteach Synoptic, because it's its own 6-7 day module. So you have to make sure that you do practice that. But the next part of this, when we are talking about limiting factor analysis, what we are saying is we haven't got enough of something to be able to make everything in our demand. So we can see here the demand for our contract is that we would be able to make 1,200 units of G5, 1,200 units of J6, and 1,500 units of L7. Now, we want to make the most amount of money based on how many hours we've got available. If we had unlimited hours, we'd make all of that, and we'd be able to say, right, for each of these units, we were making £2, £3 and £4, because that's what our contribution is. But because we've only got 1,200 labour hours available, we want to maximise those 1,200 hours to make the most profitable product per labour hour. So this is where potentially there's sometimes some issues when we are talking about our limiting factor analysis. So every hour of labour, when I'm making a G5, I'm making £12. Every hour of labour when I'm making a J6, I'm making £9. And every hour of labour when I'm making an L7, I'm making £8. So what one of these do you want to make first? Perfect. Thanks, guys. Brilliant. Lots of answers coming in there. All right. I want to make as many G5s as I can. Then what do I want to make second? J6. Perfect. And then I'm going to make as many L7s as I can until I run out of labour hours. Now, it's all well and good knowing how to do all this fancy spreadsheets, but you've got to have the knowledge from the other modules to make sure that you can actually prepare each of these. So if I didn't know how to do a rank, I could just simply type in 1, 2, 3. It does tell me to use a ranking formula. So I need to know how to do it. But if you go blank in the exam, that's what you can do. You can type it in, which then means that you can finish the rest of the task. So that's really important that you do have that exam technique. But let's how we look at a rank. So I'm going to type it again, and then I will show you in, like I say, the wizard, but it is this little formula bar up here, this function bar up here. So whatever way works best for you, you can then choose what you would do. Abby, yes, you would lose marks without using a rank formula, but only for the rank formula, which is probably only going to be worth 1, maybe 2 marks as a maximum. If you don't type it in, you're going to lose the rest of the marks on this task. So yes, you would use it because it does specifically ask you to do that, but you're only going to lose those marks. Whereas if you don't do anything, or you spend 25 minutes trying to work it out, you're going to lose further marks on going forward. So it's good exam technique to know when to leave something behind and move on. Good, let's have a look at this rank formula then. So equals rank. I'm going to open up my brackets, and as always, I'm hoping that you can all see in these boxes, it is giving me some indication. So I'm just going to read this question. It was wrong in the order when I did it, but then I did the rest manually. So again, you just lose those marks for that part of the question. The rest you'd actually still be able to get follow-on marks. That's a great thing with a synoptic because it's humanly marked. The marker would be able to see that that part was wrong, but you'd still get follow-on marks. Whereas when we are having something that's marked by a computer, if you do anything wrong, it's very difficult to then get any further follow-on marks. But let's just talk about this rank formula. So equals rank, and what it's done is opened up in our bracket some information. Now the first thing is number. That's what number would you like to rank? Well, I would like to rank this number 12. And as I press a comma, you'll see that it then makes the reference in bold. Now what that's asking me is where would you like to rank this number within? So I would like it to rank within these three numbers. So I'd like to know where 12 comes within 12, 9 and 8. If I then press comma again, you'll see it gives me two options. It is either descending or ascending. Now I want it to give this 12 a 1. So I'd like it to do it in descending order. So I'm going to put a 0 in here. And then as I close off my bracket, I'm hoping that it has a 1 in that box. So as I press enter, I can see there that it has actually got a 1. Now, if I did that wrong and I put a 1 at the end of my formula, so if I thought that it was ascending that I needed, when I press enter, that would say 3. Now, we have already said, well, hang on a minute, we want that to show a 1. So if I did put a 1 in there and it showed a 3, I can go back and then change it and I can sense check it. Jennifer's just said, what rank formula, does it matter what rank formula you use? Absolutely not. The only one in our syllabus is the normal rank. But if you use another one at work or you've used it in any other capacity, that's fine. You won't lose any marks for that. But the only one in your syllabus is just a normal rank. The other couples aren't. But it's fine if you do know about them. But if you don't know about them, don't worry about them. They are more complicated. Good. So a couple of you have asked about absolute cell referencing. Now, absolute cell referencing means that when I drag something along, it stops my cells from moving. So if I look at my formula here, I've done equals C14 in this row here of C, D and E 14. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to drag it along. And what you're going to see is if I now look at that formula, everything's moved along. So I've now looked at D14, but I've looked at it in D through to F. I've also now looked at it at E through to G. Now, a couple of you have asked about absolute cell referencing, and what absolute cell referencing does is it stops those cells moving along. So if I'm looking at this formula, which two of these do I want to absolute reference to stop my boxes moving over to the right as I drag? Perfect, Delvin. Good. Absolutely. So for those of you that have asked about it, well done to everybody that's getting it. You're absolutely right. What absolute cell referencing does is I want it to not move this C14 to E14 over to the right so that I can drag my formula along. And the way that I do that is I pop a $ in front of the C and a $ in front of the 14 and a $ in front of the E and a $ in front of the F of the 14. So whoever is me in the chat box that's written F4, you're absolutely right. You can do a shortcut with F4. I don't ever do that in class because obviously it's very difficult for me to show my keyboard when we are doing it. But if anyone does want the shortcut, you're absolutely right. You've got F4 or Command T on the Mac. Thank you, guys. That's very helpful. Keep popping those into the chat box for anybody that does like shortcuts. And when I've pressed enter, what I can now do is drag that along. So L's just written, I did a $ before C and E, not after, and it worked. Right, that's a really good question, L. The reason why is because that dollar in front of the 14 is actually only absoluting this row 14. So if I now was to drag this down to the bottom, it would absolute it down to the bottom as well. So what you've done is you've just absoluted the column rather than the row, which in this scenario is absolutely fine. That would not lose you any marks, and that would be absolutely fine in the exam. So it's another really good question. Brilliant. Good. Okay. Next one that we've got then. Jennifer's just asked, would you ever be expected to use cell naming? As far as I'm aware, it's not in your syllabus. I don't think it's in the syllabus. I will double check before next week though. I'll just pop it in, just pop myself a little note to double check. But as far as I'm aware, it's not in your syllabus. So I don't think that you would have to do that. Hang on a minute, someone's just come off of mute. Good, it sounds like it's bedtime. Sarah, what that means is that you would highlight this section and that you can rename it up here and you can use a name in a formula. It's not used hugely common, so I don't want to complicate it because I don't think it is in your syllabus, but I will just double check and I'll get back. I'll put that into next week to make sure I come back to you. If I don't, remind me and then I'll do it again. So the question there was, have you got to use that absolute cell referencing? Because I've just copied across, then moved the boxes. Sometimes in the question, it asks you to use absolute cell referencing, and quite a lot of people have asked me to cover it, which is why I've covered it. It wasn't asked here, so you didn't have to do it, but people have asked me to, so I wanted to make sure that I did cover absolute cell referencing and how it works. Good, okay, let's move on, otherwise we're not going to get finished anywhere near 8 o'clock. Obviously, if we do run over, I'm happy to. If anyone does need to drop off, you will obviously get the recording tomorrow so you can watch to the end. Good, right, so number of labour hours available. So it tells us there are 1,200 labour hours available. There is nothing we can link that to, so we just type it in. Now we've got to start thinking about our costing. So number of labour hours allocated to each contract. So we are going to make all of contract 1, all of contract 2, and we're going to make as much of contract 3 as we can until we run out of hours. So we want to make sure that we pop in here how many hours each of these contracts are going to take. So 200 hours is for G5, 400 hours is for J6. So at this point, I've used up 600 of my hours. So what I need to do is I need to work out how many hours I've got left. Sarah, I'm just lazy. There's no point me typing it in when it's up here, so I'm just going to reference it. If you typed it in, that's fine. It just says here there are 1,200 labour hours available, Walter, just in row 10. So if you typed it in, it just means for me, I'm just used to using a spreadsheet. If you can use a formula though, because it is a spreadsheets exam, use it if you can. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a formula for this last one. So I have got 1,200 hours in total, and I have already used up 200 of those hours, and I've used up 400 of those hours. So that means that I've got 600 hours left, and now when I add these up, I've used up my 1,200 hours. I've now got to work out how many units that relates to. Abby, you can use an equals or a plus. It doesn't matter. It would be the same answer. So I'm now going to say how many units have I made. So I have got there, I'm going to make 1,200 units. There is no such thing as a silly question. It's absolutely not a problem at all. Keep asking. 1,200 units. I then made all of my contract J6, which means I've made another 1,200 units. But for this last one, I haven't been able to make all of them. So I've got to work out how many hours each unit takes for me to make, to work out how many units that I've made. So to do that, I'm going to have to use a formula. So in many different ways you can do formulas. And like I said last week, if you use a different way to do a formula, it doesn't matter. If it gets you the same answer, there's lots of different ways. I'm just showing you one way. So if you don't know how to do it, you can use this way. So I've now got my total number of, sorry, I've just lost my place here because I read that question. Jennifer, so you wouldn't be expected to do anything more? No, the ranking, that's all it is. That's just all you're doing there is being asked to rank the contracts. That's as far as it will go. Okay, perfect. So now what we're going to do is we've got to work out how many hours each of these contracts take. So if I was to make 1,500 units, it would take me 750 hours to be able to do that. So I've just done equal sum E6, and what's now in my cell is how many hours it would take to make each one of those contracts. I know I can't make all of them, so I've worked out how long it takes to make one contract, and I'm now going to multiply that by the number of hours that I've actually used, which means that I'm going to be able to make 1,200 units out of a demand of 1,500. So I've just there put in the information. So Becky's just asked, if you didn't put the sum at the start, would it still work? Give it a go, play around. You don't have to do it like that. You can do it, like I said a minute ago, you can do it in as many different ways as you want. But obviously remember, if you just do equals over, it probably wouldn't work because it depends on what Excel's doing. So you can work it out and that would be absolutely fine. Absolutely. Well, as long as it comes out the same answer, it doesn't matter. There is hundreds of different ways that you can do the sums. Good, okay, so let's finish off these boxes then. We've now got to calculate the total contribution earned. Well, for 1,200 units, I am earning £2 per unit. So that's what we calculated right at the beginning. So I'm going to have 2,400 and I can drag that along, 3,600 and 4,800. I can then take off my fixed cost. Again, I'm going to be lazy. The fixed cost is shown in here, so I might as well equals it up to that top box up there. And then what I've got to do as my last step is to calculate my profit or loss made. So I can just put a sum in here to do my contribution less my fixed cost. You don't have to use a sum. You can just do them as you go through and you can pop in there. Martin, you don't necessarily have to show them as a negative, no, because you could just do that in your sum. I just normally do because it is just clearer because it does say less fixed cost, but you don't have to. You could just do it as an equals here. Final one then is just to calculate my sum. Equals my sum as we go across, 6,300. And I've now completed all of my limiting factor analysis. So most of that isn't really spreadsheets, it's more around your costing module. So if you're unsure about it, go back and revise your costing. Obviously go back to your old practice material. If you are struggling for material and you would like any first intuition, contact me and I'll put you in touch with people and you'll be able to obviously purchase some extra questions if you do want some. Good. So we've now done all of this. I'm just a little bit concerned of time, so I'm just going to make sure that we do move on. How did I show a negative? I've just put a negative in front of it. So I'll just put a negative in front. Good, so moving on. Formatting all currency figures to the nearest pound and make sure I show my data in the cell. This one's interesting though. I need to make sure that all negative figures should be shown in red in brackets. So first of all, I need to identify what is a currency figure. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to highlight them, and I'm going to press Control on my keypad and just go down and work out all the ones that are currency. So these two are currency. That's the number of labour hours. That's my number of units. This is my contribution, and all of these down here are currency. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click. So I want to show you how you can make sure you can always fulfill the requirements in the question. So a lot of things are in your shortcuts. So if you do know where they all are, that's great. But if something comes up and you haven't got a shortcut, remember you're not going to be using your own computer in the exam. This is a way that you can always make sure that you can fulfill those requirements. So if I just do that again, if I've highlighted all the ones that are currency, I'm going to right click and go on to Format Cells. I'm going to go down to Custom, and you can see here you've got all of these really complicated boxes. For homework, I want you just to play around with them and make sure you are comfortable with them. But for example, you can see some there with .00, that's going to be 2 decimal places. You can see some with red in a box, that's going to make the negative figure red. You can see one there with a negative figure in front of the red, that's going to put a minus in front of that figure. It asked me to use brackets. Now I can't see one that actually pops brackets in there. So if it's not automatically set up on your computer, you may need to change it. And I'm going to show you how to do that. So I'm going to click on this one. And if I just read through this, this means number, comma, number. Oh, I don't want that one, I want this one. This means currency, number, comma, and then the rest of the word. Then I've got the red, and I'm just going to change, instead of a negative, I'm going to change it to a bracket. So I've just deleted that negative and put a bracket around it. So that means that any negative figure will now be shown with a bracket around it in red. So as I press OK, everything's now in currency to whole numbers, and I can see that my red figure has got a bracket around it. Normally you can just press currency and that's absolutely fine, but I just wanted to show you that if there was something that wasn't set up on your computer, that's how you would do it. Good. Right, so we've now done this requirement here. All in currency, any negative figures should be shown in red brackets. Right, now let's start getting on to the new bits. Caroline, can you just do the red bit manually? I wouldn't. You're right. You can't actually tell when you get onto the exam, but I would try and learn to do that, because the marker will be able to tell. They'll be able to see the formatting that you would do. Jennifer, you're absolutely right, but actually you would still fulfill the requirements because you wouldn't have a negative figure, so it would be fine. Could you use conditional formatting? It's harder. I can't see why not, but actually again, in the number cells here, you wouldn't do that at work. You wouldn't use conditional formatting to do that. So I would recommend just practice, 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 because that as an accountant is something that you are going to use over and over and over again. So it's very, 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 very careful. So Elle, if you just right click and go into format cells, you need to change your negative there to be a bracket around. So you just need to delete your minus cell. Okay, perfect. What have we got next? So copy the cells in B12 to F21 and paste special values onto a new tab. Delete all the data apart from the first line and the profit and loss figures. So I'm going to go in and copy B12 through to F21, and I'm going to copy it, and on a new tab I'm going to paste special values. So I'm just going to copy it in here just to get the format, and then paste my special values. And what you will notice when I click in the cells, I'm just going to manipulate this a little bit, is that all of my formulas have disappeared. Now it asked me to paste special values, so as I do that, all of my formulas have disappeared. It then says delete all of the cells apart from the first line and the profit and loss. So I'm just going to delete those, and all it leaves me with is the contract and the profit or loss that has been made. So I've done everything there. I've copied the cells and pasted special values. I've deleted all the data apart from the first line and the profit and loss figure. Create a pie chart to show the profit breakdown by contract. Rename it profit and loss by contract. Add the data labels inside the end of the pie chart to show the profit figures, and rename the worksheet pie chart. So let's do that first. That's easy. Rename it pie chart. Make sure I don't forget. And what I want to do is just highlight the data that I want to pop into my pie chart. So I've highlighted all the contracts and the profit and loss. I'm going to insert, and you can see here with my charts, I've got a pie chart that I can insert here. So I'm going to do a 2D pie. It doesn't tell me that I need to do that. Sometimes it will specify which one. It doesn't. So I'm just going to use the most simple one. And I can see now that it's broken down the profit and loss made by each contract. It's got a key there. It didn't tell me to do anything to change that. But what it told me to do is to pop data labels in. And it specifically told me that I should pop these in inside the end of my pie chart. So it might tell me best fit. It might tell me outside. It might tell me in the center. But this specifically told me to pop them inside the end. So I want to make sure that that's where they are. And it also told me to rename this pie chart to be profit and loss by contract. So now I've fulfilled all of my requirements of my pie chart. If you click on this up here, there will be a box. So it'll be boxes up here, and you'll have all of your formatting. So just a question there, if the test elements don't appear near to the chart, where do I find them? If you click on the chart, they'll all be in the ribbon if they're not on the side of the box. But if you have got a new version of Excel, they should be down there. If not, you can right click and you can get to them all from there as well. A few different ways. Good, so I'm happy with that requirement. I've done a pie chart, I've renamed it, I've put my data labels on, and I've renamed the worksheet. Now we've got we've got our goal seek. This is the one that I think most people had some issues with. So let's make sure that we really carefully read the requirement. Return to the limiting factor analysis tab and copy all the data onto a new tab. Now it doesn't say paste its special values. When you are doing a goal seek, you have to leave the formulas in your worksheet, otherwise it will not work. So make sure that you don't paste special values, because the whole point with a goal seek is that you are using the formulas to change the numbers. So if you have paste special values, that's probably why it wouldn't work. Let me just answer Fran's question quickly. If one of the formulas was incorrect, the pie chart was wrong, would you still get all the marks for the pie chart? Absolutely. You only lose the marks when it's humanly marked for the part that you got wrong. That's the massive benefit from this synoptic exam and going into level 4. When it's marked by a human, you still get follow-through marks. Okay, I'm just going to leave the chat box for a minute, because I know there's a lot of people that did struggle with this, and I want to make sure that we really, really all get it. So you need to make sure that you leave your formulas when you are doing a goal seek. Using the goal seek function, calculate how many hours would be required to complete all of the demand for these contracts. Take a screenshot of your goal seek before you calculate and paste into the worksheet, and rename the worksheet goal seek. So let's do the easy bits first. So I can copy all of the data onto a new tab. So I'm going to copy everything, and I'm going to copy it onto a new tab. The next easy thing is rename the goal seek worksheet goal seek. So there'll be marks for both of those things. So if you weren't sure how to do these middle bits, doing those first two bits would have still got you some marks. So let's rename it goal seek. Don't see goal seek and think, I don't know how to do it, I'm not going to do it at all. So we've now done those two bits. Now, what it's saying is it's saying, well, you had 1,200 hours and you couldn't make everything in your contracts because your demand was actually 1,200, 1,200 and 1,500. Well, I've only been able to make all of J5 and J6. I couldn't make all of J7. So what you're basically saying is how many hours would be needed in this box to be able to fulfill that demand. Hopefully that now makes sense. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my goal seek to actually fulfill that information. Now it's always going to tell you to take a screenshot of the goal seek before you calculate, because what it wants to do is it wants to see a screenshot of your information before, what you've entered into the box and what it comes out with at the end. Because otherwise you could have just manually changed the numbers, and that's not what they're asking you to do. So you will lose marks if you do that. So I want to make sure that before I press OK, I take a screenshot of it and I'm going to pop that into this worksheet. So go to my data, what if analysis and goal seek. And let's see if we can update this. So I want to set this number here, E18, to what value? What's the total demand for the contract of L7? Super, guys, well done, perfect. So I want to set E18 to 1,500 because that would mean that I've been able to make all of the units in my contract. So what cell am I going to change to make that 1,500? Super, great guys, brilliant, well done. So I want to change the number in F16. So because these are all formulas, when I press enter in a moment, what it's going to do is it's going to work out what that needs to be to make this number down here 1,500. Now, if you've typed these in or you've manually calculated them, the goal seek will not work. They have to be formulas. So that might mean where some of you have gone wrong. I'm just going to move the group chat down for a moment so I can take a screenshot. So I'm just going to print screen that bit there. And then as I press OK, what you will see is all of my numbers change. And now, to be able to make all of my demands, I need 1,350 hours in total to be able to do it. So the last part of that requirement was to just pop a screenshot of that into your cell. So I just crop the top off normally because I don't need it, just so that I can read it when I look. So what I just did there, if anyone doesn't know, is I just clicked the picture format in the ribbon. I've just gone to crop. You don't have to do this, but it just means that I can make it sit better on my screen. And I'm just going to make it a bit smaller so that you can see on that screen there that actually before I pressed OK on the goal seek, my numbers were 1,200 and that I could only make 1,200 of my contract. But now when I've inputted that information, you can now see that my numbers have changed to 1,350. Now that's generally the way that a goal seek works. Now the hardest thing with it is just deciphering what the question was asking. So the biggest thing that you can do is to step back and say, what was that asking me to do? And once you've worked it out, hopefully that should be nice and clear. So Damien just said I got the same answer, but I used E17. No, that's fine, Damien, absolutely, because you've just used the labour information rather than the units. That would be fine, as long as the rest of it's fine and it's all going to be set up. Why are we using E18? Just because that was the number of contracts, but you could have used 17 and used the number of hours. Damien's absolutely spot on there, well done. That doesn't answer your question, does it, Becky? Why are we using E18 in a set cell? Because what I want it to do is I'm saying I want it to change E18 to 1,500, because 1,500 means that I've now fulfilled all of my requirements in the question. If you was to use E17, you'd have to use 750, which I'm sure that's what Damien's done, and well done for that. Good, brilliant. You have to read the requirements, but generally the screenshot is before you've changed it. So that otherwise your screenshot here will show the same numbers as your screenshot over here. So what it's trying to prove is that you actually did use a goal seek to change these numbers. So generally the requirement will be that you'll take a screenshot before you press OK, but you just need to make sure you do read it carefully. Would you also screenshot after? No, you don't need to, because it's all there. It's all in there. Would you use F21? I don't know what F21. Why? I don't know why you'd use F21, because that's just on the profit. So that's not really what the requirement's asking you. The requirement's asking you to change the number of hours to be able to fulfill demand. I suppose you could actually. You could actually use it to get this profit up to the same. So I suppose you could use it, yeah, if you did everything else right, but it's not really what it's asking you to do. It is asking you to do it to be able to fulfill demand. But I suppose you could. Okay, all highlighted, all done. Last requirement, I realise that it's already 8 o'clock. I'm not in any rush though, so if you have got some questions that you do want to ask, hang on, I'm happy to answer them after we've just looked at this requirement here. Good, so the owners of Cook & Co have contacted you for advice on how they can fulfill demand on these contracts. Please email and include the following. How many units can they fulfill based on the current hours? How many additional hours would they require to be able to fulfill total demand? And provide some advice as to how the company can achieve these additional labour hours that have been required. So I've written my email already. Remember, this is always going to look different for each of you because you are different people. You're going to include different information. So as long as it's on the same sort of lines, this will be absolutely fine in your questions. So always start it off as an email from AAT student to whoever they tell you, and a sensible subject. To the owners of Cook & Co, I understand you've recently not been able to complete all of your orders for contracts due to a shortage of labour hours. As long as that is a sensible opening sentence, that will be fine. It doesn't have to say exactly what I've written. It just needs to be a sensible question. You originally had 1,200 labour hours available, and this meant that you could complete demand for your contracts G5 and J6. However, for L7, you could only complete 1,200 units out of a demand of 1,500. All I've done there is explain what calculations I've just done. And if you think about the things that you do at work, that's what you do all the time. You do a spreadsheet and then you pop that spreadsheet information onto an email and you send it to somebody else. So I've just explained what's happening. To be able to fulfill demand on this contract, you will need to increase the number of available hours to 1,350, which is an increase of 150 hours. I have seen that question. I'll answer it in a minute, just in case anybody needs to drop off. To do this, you could hire additional staff to complete these hours or offer overtime to your current staff to do these additional hours. There is a limitless number of things that you could suggest in that box there. As long as it's sensible and it would help them to be able to decrease that gap, you will get marks available for it. That's just a couple of things that you could do. So let me know if you have any further questions and just finish it off as a normal email. Anything sensible will make sense. If anybody does need to drop off, I know that it is 8:05, thank you very much. The recording and everything will be coming out tomorrow. I'm just going to answer these questions. And then if anyone's got any other questions, I'll go through them. There's no rush if anybody isn't any rush to get away. So let's just have a look here. So another Rebecca has asked, I know it's not really you, would you explain the limiting factor aspect in your email? You have, haven't you, really? You've said that you've not got enough hours to be able to fulfill full demand. You could use the phrase limiting factor, absolutely, but we have already actually explained that factor in here. Is the 1,350 increase from Becky question here, 150 from the goal seek? Absolutely. So originally we had 1,200 hours. Now they need 1,350 to be able to fulfill demand. So they need an extra 150 hours to be able to make all of the contracts. So yes, you're absolutely right. It's come from that goal seek. Sarah said they could include looking at whether any current work process could be streamlined to save time. You're absolutely right. So if they're using less hours on what they're doing at the moment, they've got spare capacity and they would then be able to make more contracts. Absolutely. Totally sensible. You'd be getting marks there if you've written that. Perfect. Shelley's just right. Unfortunately, I arrived late. Can I watch the full video? Absolutely, Shelley. At the end of this, what I will do is I will send out the recording. It will have a link to all of the old pre-work and also the link to the answers as well. So you'll get everything on an email because you are registered. So no worries, you'll get all of that coming through to you in a moment. Sarah, will you do a brief explanation on how we upload, please? Now, this is actually going to be different depending on where you sit your exams. Sarah, where do you sit your exams? If you just let me know at the bottom of the chat box. It's going to be slightly different. I can only ask for how it works at First Intuition. So at First Intuition in Chelmsford, you will have a folder on the desktop where you'll be able to upload your files into that, and then you will then upload it just onto the AAT website, a bit like I do here if I increase a file. So when I upload the file, it just goes on. And actually in Chelmsford, the invigilators are able to help you with that. It's not part of the exam. I don't know if that works the same at every centre. I can't answer the question for where you sit them. So, you do it at the college. So I don't know. I think it will be the same. So you'll probably have a file on the desktop and you'll be able to save your files in there and then you'll be able to upload them as you go through. Martin, thanks for the recap. Most appreciated. Feel a little more confident. Fabulous. That's great to hear. Thank you very much. Shelley, you're welcome. Good. Thanks again for today. Just seeing if there's any other questions. Super. Right. Okay. So, hang on a minute. They're all going, chat box is going crazy now. Just let me have a minute. Becky said, can I have a look at the page where we inputted our suggestions so I can see if I have any more? Give me a minute and I'll pop that up on the screen. Thank you very much, Sarah. It's a lovely message. Really appreciated. Good. Glad you arrived. Just reading through. I know it's going to look really weird on YouTube because I'm just having a look. Good. If anyone's got any other questions on anything, just pop them in the chat box. What I'm just going to do is I'm just going to pop this sheet up here. If there is anything extra, if you want to write it in the chat box, I will write it on my piece of paper. And that's all that I've got today, unless anyone's got any questions. I'll hang around for a bit if anybody has. But thank you very much for your interactivity. It does make it a lot easier for me to do this job. So as a reminder, you will receive tonight a link to the recording. It will also be uploaded onto YouTube over the next couple of days, so you can get it on there, which is good. Good idea to put on YouTube, not for me. I find it quite mortifying, to be honest, but it's on there. It's on there for the world to see. How long do you have for this task in the exam? That's a really good question. So for the spreadsheets, it's 1 hour and 45 minutes, and you will have 2 tasks. So this will obviously be quite a bit longer than what we've gone for. Unfortunately, we only have 1 hour. And we have to, as we saw at the beginning, still look at ethics as well, because it is a part of the syllabus that people do tend to actually just neglect, and then they end up failing on the ethics, which is a bit of a shame because they put all of their work into spreadsheets. So I do want to make sure that we do carry on with the ethics little chapter at the beginning, but it means that we obviously just do a little snippet, and the long spreadsheets bit will be 1 hour and 45 minutes. Delvin's just asked, how would you decide on time for 2.1 and 2.2? I mean, for me, normally I would look at the number of marks that they are. So it should tell you in the exam. Normally 2.1 is 55 marks and 2.2 is 45. So I would spend like obviously 55% of my time on 2.1 as you go through. So just to recap to anybody that wasn't here last week, The first part of the exam on ethics is an hour and 15 minutes. The second part of the exam on spreadsheets is an hour and 45 minutes. So what I would do, you can't finish the ethics early and then take 2 hours on spreadsheets. So once the hour and 15 minutes is up, that's when you'll move on to spreadsheets. If you decide after 45 minutes to stop your spreadsheet, stop your ethics, sorry, you can't then use that additional information on spreadsheets. So that's very different from the other type of exams that we see. It's very strict. You can cut that time short, but you still won't be able to make it up on another one. So that's where your practice really comes in. First Intuition are working on at the moment of doing a product, which will just be a set of mock exams. So there's another question on here. Where's the best place to get lots of spreadsheet tasks to practice? First Intuition will be offering a mock product. I'm not sure how much it's going to be yet. I'm not sure of any of the information. As soon as it comes out, I'll let you all know. But it's going to be a couple of mock exams that you can actually get marked by a tutor at First Intuition. It will just be mock exams, so it will obviously give you an opportunity to do it all to time. However, on top of that question, if you go onto the AAT website, there are practice exams on there. So there's 3 practice exams that you'll be able to get on there that you can have a look at. So there's extra things that you can do. But as soon as that new product does come out, I will let you all know. But the AAT website is great also. I think it's got at least 3 mock exams on there. And I think I sent out some guidelines as to how to get onto it. But I'll tell you what, I'll send out some guidelines as to how to find it on the AAT website, just in case, so there's some extra practice. Nadia's just said, will there be another pre-work for next week? I hope so. I'm glad you like them because they take me a long time to write. Yes, they absolutely will be. What I'll do is I'll send out a link to it in the email that I send when I send out the recording, so it's all in one place. So you'll have that, which is great. I think it's always good to do, I think it's always good to obviously be able to do a pre-work, because it means you can find out where you're struggling with and then we can go through it. There's a question there, how good is the BPP workbook for Synoptic? I don't know, I don't work for BPP, so I'm sorry I can't actually answer any question on BPP material. I can only answer on First Intuition, so unfortunately I'm not sure. Sarah, will they be new questions written by the team in the FI? Absolutely, the mock exams will be new questions, so they'll be different. All of this stuff that you've seen over these courses is stuff that I've written, so it won't be repeated anywhere else, because it's stuff that I've actually written for you guys specifically. Good. Has everyone heard that AAT, there is going to be some synoptic windows in July to be able to sit your exam? Has anyone got any questions around that? So you have now got some dates. Have we all seen that? Does anyone not know that? Good, okay, perfect. So if you haven't seen it, on the AAT website, there's all details on there. So in July, so that's a good question. When can you book them, Damien? So we don't know everything. All we know is that from the end of June, I think it's the 22nd of June, you will be able to book your exams. What we're trying to do is we're trying to work out what centres can open. So Becky, that's a good question. You emailed your FI centre if they're trying to, so lots of people are asking about whether their centres are opening. We only found out this information yesterday. So we are trying to work out if we can actually open safely. So can we make sure we distance? A lot of our centres are sharing a building with other companies. So we're still trying to work out whether we can safely open. As soon as we know, we will open up, and anybody that had their exams booked, they will get first choice at a sitting. So if you had an exam booked or you've been on a course, a synoptic course at FI, you will have first pick at being able to do that. I'm really glad that you went, Fran, and hopefully it was quite useful, lots of information there. I don't have all the answers, but the great thing is you will be able to sit the synoptic in July. There's 2 windows, there's one in August, and then there's a couple more as you go through. They've gone back to normal dates, so hopefully we'll be able to sit them at a First Intuition centre or the centre that you normally do. Sarah, that's a really great question. If the synoptic is in June, but we can't sit final accounts prep to August, do you know how that will work? We've actually already asked the AAT that question, whether you can sit the synoptic without sitting your other modules, because obviously before all of this you couldn't. We haven't yet received an answer, so I'm just going to pop that into my list. I'm just going to pop it onto the list to try and find out so I can answer the question next week. That's a really good question. It's a good prompt for me. So can you sit the synoptic? I'll find out and I will answer that question next week. Okay, Nick must have got an answer then. Fran's just said, I'm sure Nick said no earlier. I will ask in the morning because we have a call every single week. So I will, every day, sorry. So I'll find out for sure and I'll let you all know next week. We did ask, obviously that was good. Thank you for making this available for everyone at Given Up. I'm really glad it is. It is hard work because obviously there's lots of you on here, but I am really glad that everybody is feeling more confident. The feedback's been so positive from everybody, so I can only thank you all for obviously being so positive and giving it a go. So I'm really enjoying them, and hopefully we can get in as much as you guys have popped into these boxes. I can't promise that I'm going to get everything, but I'm going to try. I'm going to try and get as much in as I can. Becky's asked a question, will these study sessions run up to the date available for the synoptic? I'm actually due to go on maternity leave at the end of June, which is why they're set to stop at the end of June. I have mentioned about the feedback and how positive it's been, and we are trying to find somebody to cover up until the date of the exam. So I'm not going to say yes, I'm not going to say no. If my baby will wait, I'll carry on and do a couple of extra weeks, but I can't obviously... I can't promise that. So I have mentioned to the team and we are trying to find someone that is available on a Wednesday that isn't already working quite a lot of other evenings to be able to do them. So leave it with me and I will feed back to you and keep Wednesday evenings free for a little while so I can obviously feed back. I'm happy to carry them on if the baby isn't here yet, but I haven't got much control over that. So I will keep it on the radar. And I'll let you know next week if I've managed to find anybody. Great. Oh, thank you very much. I don't know who wrote that. It looks like I wrote it. The next one must be as good as you. It looks like it came from me. So thank you. Before I start writing myself messages. Yeah, that also has come from me, modest. I don't know what's happened with Zoom, but it's not been too bad. I did have a little 5-minute panic that there was 35 Rebecca Empsons in the room and I thought I was being cloned, but it must just be a little Zoom glitch. I don't know what's gone on. I haven't had it before. Good. If there's any other questions then keep popping them into the chat box. But if not, thank you very much, guys. And as soon as the recording comes through, all of the details and the pre-work for next week will start making their way to you. So if there are any other questions, I'm happy to carry on answering them. But if not, you can start dropping off if you are all happy to. Thank you very much, guys, and I'll see you next Wednesday.